Hey guys, Darren Murphy here, aka More Precious Dust. Sorry I haven't posted a YouTube video in a little while. Life happens. In my last video, I did say the next one was going to be about 7th chords, continuing the music theory video set I was putting together. But this is an Ableton channel, first and foremost, and I've only put out one Ableton video thus far. So let's leave the music theory for a later date and let's get back into Ableton. Today, I'm going to show you the audio effect rack that I built that I use when I play shows live. Let's kick it. The audio effect rack that I'm going to show you today is great for producers who are just starting to play live shows. When I first started to play live shows, I struggled to find the right type of effects I could apply to my clips generously, because my clips contained entire songs, my tracks fully mixed and mastered. So applying the wrong effect would stop the song dead in its tracks, stop the flow of music. But if you build your audio effect rack correctly, you can get around this. Let's see what I did. All right, so this is the live audio effect rack that we're going to be going over today. We're going to be listening to a clip or a loop from an unfinished song of mine that will be on my new album, hopefully out later this year. Cross your fingers. When I play live, I will play in my session view, which is typical of most producers. We're going to be in the arrangement view for this video, though. It doesn't make a difference. Whether you're in the arrangement view or the session view, your live audio effect rack will always be on the master track. Now, I hope listening to this loop over and over during this video doesn't get too redundant, but I want to do it that way so it can be clear what the effects are doing and their distinction between each other can be clear. So I'm going to run through each knob one by one, and I'm not going to talk. We're just going to listen to see what they do. Okay. There are 3 layers of an audio effect rack that you need to be aware of. The first is the macro layer, which is what we're looking at now. You can toggle it on and off with this button right below the on-off switch there. It's called the macro layer because these 8 knobs are called macros, and they're called that because you can map not just one effect, but various effects and parameters to them at the same time. I'm not even positive if there's a limit to how many effects or parameters you can map to them. And that is the key into how we get around the issue of not overpowering a clip with a certain effect. The next layer is the chain layer. By default, you'll have 1 chain, but you see I have 4. Whenever you create a new chain, it's creating a parallel path for the music to go down. Basically, you're duplicating the music. If you have ever heard of parallel compression, that's how it's done. And finally, the last layer is the device layer, which is the button right above the chain layer there. And that shows you the devices that are on the chain you currently have selected. Each chain can have their own device bus. So right now, here are the devices on my main. And then as I click other chains, highlight other chains, you see the devices update or change. All right, let's recreate this audio effect rack from scratch. You can find the audio effect rack in Audio Effects right at the top, or if you're one of those sorry souls who still has all the folders consolidated like they came in Ableton 11, you can find it in Utilities.
I just could never get used to the folder consolidation. I actually cannot stand it. Get it out of my face.
All right, drag and drop, audio effect rack. Let's expand the macro layer. Close the device layer for a moment. So we have our 8 blank macro knobs. And you'll see as I build these, the first few macros are rather simple, but they get more complex from there. And you can rename any of these macros with Command R, just like you can rename anything in Ableton. So gain low is our first one. Let's open our chain layer. I guess I lied to you earlier when I said there was a chain there by default. There isn't, no matter. Just right click, create chain. And this was our main chain. Rename that. And let's open our device layer for this chain. So the gain low, what that effect was doing was basically just taking out the low end and leaving everything else. It's a really good way to build anticipation and tension in your song before bringing it all back and giving your audience a nice release. And this is a real simple knob, but very good to have in your arsenal because you don't have to think about it. You can just grab it, crank it down, and the low will go away. You don't have to worry about anything else. Bring it all back, and it'll be all there for your audience's entertainment. So to do this very simple thing, all you need is an EQ3. And my first Ableton video, there were EQ8s everywhere, but an EQ3 is going to suffice for this. Let's drag and drop here. And so what we're going to do is we're going to map this low gain volume, to the gain low macro. So how do you map any effector parameter to the macros? Well, rather simple. Click on map right here. And so what happens when map is selected is you see that all the parameters that can be mapped are get highlighted in green. And you also see that each of the macros has a map knob below it. And also this list to the left of all of your mapped parameters will pop up. As you see, it's blank right now because we have nothing mapped. So to map the gain low parameter to the gain low macro, just click on it. You don't have to hold it. You don't have to drag and drop. Just one click and then click map right here for your gain low macro. And now you see it pops up here on the menu. So you will see that each parameter has a min value and a max value, which makes sense because you're turning your knob and it needs to know where you want it to end and where you want it to start. So the minimum here is infinite, the max is 6 dB. So let's unclick map. Let's see how that's going. Okay, 6, infinite, fine. Pretty much what we want, except we don't want to go above 0. We do not want 6 dB to be our max value. So hit map again, click on 6, and you can edit the parameters right in the parameter map list here on the left. So unclick. Now max value is 0, not 6. Min value is still infinite. So let's play the song, see how this sounds. Okay, real simple. I also like to rename the effects that are here based on what macro they are affecting, just to keep it straight in my head. So the next macro is our low pass. And what this one effectively was doing is taking a low pass filter and sweeping it through the frequency range. So as you start turning the knob, the very high frequencies will start to disappear, and as you keep turning, lower and lower frequencies will disappear until you don't have anything. To achieve this, you want not an EQ3, but an EQ8. So right there in the menu, drag it right by the EQ3. So it's our 4th node here that's going to be moving. So we'll click on that, and we'll increase the frequency all the way. We'll also change its filter type to a low pass. And the frequency is the parameter that we're going to map. So click on map, click on frequency, click on the map button below the low pass macro. So now it's on our list. By default, the minimum value is 10 hertz and the maximum value is 22 kilohertz, which is actually what we want, so we don't have to touch that. So let's unclick the map, see how it moves when we turn the knob. That looks good. And also notice that the gain low and the low pass macros by default are turned all the way on. That just made more sense in my head because as you turn them counterclockwise, you're taking something away. You're taking frequencies away. Where the rest of the macros that we're going to be dealing with by default will be turned off because when you turn them clockwise, you're going to be adding something to the music. So I think that just makes sense in my head. The other thing that I map as far as the low pass goes is the EQ on off switch itself. You can actually map on off. And in this case, I don't want the EQ to be on until I start turning the low pass knob. So how do you do that? Hit map again. And it's subtle, but you can see that these on-off switches of the effects are highlighted in green as well. So they are mappable. So click that, click map. Now, this part contains a little bit of minutia. An on-off switch has a range of 0 to 127. I'm not positive why, but what you want to do in this case is make your min 127 and your max 126. I should probably just type that. There we go. Because 127 is off, and a tick later, when you actually first start touching the knob, it'll turn on because the max is 126. It's a little counterintuitive. Don't really get hung up too much on those numbers, but those are the numbers you want if you want to do what I'm about to show you. So now you see when we're completely turned to the right in our default position, the EQ8 is off. See the gray line? And right as I start turning it, boom, it turns on. So that's good. So you're not affecting anything when the knob is completely turned to its default position. All right, let's see how it sounds. Okay, sound pretty good. All right, the third macro is the high pass, which is just the opposite of the low pass. Let me minimize this so we have a little more room here. So yeah, just another EQ8. Run through this quickly. And instead of the 4 node that's going to be moving, it's going to be the 1 node. And put it all the way down. Change the filter type to a high pass. And once again, the frequency is what we're going to be mapping. Frequency, high pass map. Okay, and once again, the default is 10 hertz to 22 kilohertz. That's great. See how it moves. Okay, great. Now, also, we want to toggle or map the on-off switch of the EQ8 because we don't want this on until I start touching the macro knob. So, but the difference here, hit that map, is that instead of 127, 126, since the default position of this knob is all the way to the left versus all the way to the right for the low pass, we want 1 here and 0 here. Just kind of got to trust me on that. So let's do that on map. So you see default position all the way to the left at 10 hertz. EQ is off. We turn it on. Boom. There we go. Okay. See how that sounds. All right, great. Simple as that. What I sometimes like to do live is actually grab the low pass and the high pass knob at the same time and twist them maybe halfway. And so I kind of compress the sound into like this random mid-range of frequencies, which is kind of cool because then it kind of comes back at you at both ends. So keep that in mind. Oh, and almost forgot to rename these. High pass. Low pass. Okay, great. Minimize that. All right, so our next macro, our fourth one, is Deconstruct. And this is going to be where it starts getting interesting. So let's listen to this one again before I show you how to build it, because it's difficult to explain exactly what's happening in words. So let's just listen again. You guys hear that? That kind of like neither ear made the sound wider, definitely. All right, so how do we create that sound? Well, first, it's going to need its own chain. So let's right-click down here, create chain, name it. And this Deconstruct audio effect is made from 2 audio devices, and then there's an EQ8 at the end. There's an auto pan and a beat repeat. So let's grab the auto pan here. So we'll turn the amount up to somewhere between 75 and 80%, but we don't want this happy-go-lucky sine wave crap. We want to get messy. We want this random ass LFO, whatever you call this. Now the rate we don't want in hertz, so just click this button down here. We want it in fractions of a beat, and 1/16 is what we want. Our width, we want to get super messy with this, so bump that to 100%. Shape, so 65%, something like that. All right, so let's turn off the main chain and see what our song sounds like just running through this messy auto pan. Okay, sounds kind of cool. Definitely messy, which shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. So let's tighten that up with the beat repeat. All right, so we're gonna want our interval to be 1/16. We're gonna want our offset to be 1/16, and we're gonna want our grid to be 1/64. Turn on the no triplet button, change the trigger to 1/16. Chance 100%, great. Repeat button off, great. And the gate is going to be 15/16. Okay, so now, once again, just listening to the Deconstruct chain, let's see how that sounds. Okay, cool. We're getting closer to that tighter robotic sound that we want. So now let's listen to it again. I'll put my headphones right back on with the main bus or the main chain going. All right, definitely a little messy, a little crowded, definitely frequencies, crowding each other there. So what we're going to do with the EQ8s specifically is when we turn up the Deconstruct, we want to add certain frequencies, and at the same time, we want to take away those frequencies on the main chain. So that's exactly why the Deconstruct needs to be on its own chain, because the Deconstruct macro is also going to be affecting an EQ8 on the main chain. So I'll show you what I'm talking about here. Let's grab an EQ8 there. All right, so we're going to be adding frequencies for Deconstruct in the mid-high range. We're going to use this third node, move it to around 2K right there. So the gain of this is what we're going to map. But even before I get to that, I haven't mapped the Deconstruct volume. That's how we're going to go in and out. So let's do that first. So here's the specific volume of the Deconstruct. Map that. And so minimum, infinite, great. Max, I'm going to go -2. I'm not going to go 0. -2 right there on map. Okay, so back to the EQ8. Third node, hit map. We're going to map the gain of that third node. Boom. So by default, -15, +15, that's the whole range. We don't want that. So the minimum is going to be 0. and the max is going to be around a little below 6 here, 5.39. Okay, uncheck map. I'm also going to lower the Q of this node so I can get a little more range of frequency effectiveness right there. So basically now we're going to put an EQ8 on the main that looks like this, but opposite. So let's do that. Do EQ8. I'm going to rename this right now. Add the EQ8. That. All right, so once again, take the third node, bring it over here around 2K hertz, and the gain of that third node is what we're going to want to map, boom, to the deconstruct macro. Now, so min's going to be 0 again, and the max, instead of 5.39, it's going to be negative 5.39. There we go. Okay, so equal and opposite. Now going back to the EQ8 on the deconstruct, I also am going to take away some of the low frequencies. No matter what else is going on, I don't really feel the need to chop up the low end. That's going to create mud in and of itself. So let's get that out of there. So let's bring that up, and that's going to be permanently there. Okay, so let's see. All right, so we turn deconstruct up, and that goes up. And on the main, we turn deconstruct up, so those frequencies drop out. Let me decrease the Q here as well to make it look similar. There. Okay, great. So let's see how that sounds. Okay, a lot smoother. You can clearly hear it. So yeah, that is the deconstruct macro effect. I think it's a really cool one, and that's the first one that displays how you get around not overpowering your main clip by turning on an effect. All right, so our next macro, our fifth macro, is going to be chopper. And it's going to need its own chain again. And it will also run through an autopan like deconstruct. So if you maximize the autopan menu, there is a chopper preset, which will get you close. So it'll save you a few seconds if you use that one. But we still have to change these parameters. So we're going to be mapping the amount and the rate to the chopper macro. The only thing we're permanently going to change or alter is the phase. Bring that down to 0. Okay. So let's hit map, amount, chopper. All right, so we're going to do 35% to 100% there for the amount. And then we are going to map the rate. Click on that, hit map. And we're going to do from 116, where else? Where is that? There we go. I guess I should go back to school for fractions. And to 1/48, even lower. There we go. All right. Okay, sounds good. We're also going to put an EQ8 here. And we're only going to want to chop up, kind of like deconstruct. We don't want to chop up the low ends, so we're going to cut those out here. Bring up the EQ, similar to what we did with construct, though this is not going to be mapped. What we are going to map is the on-off switch for chopper. Unlike deconstruct, where you start turning it, it becomes gradual. The chopper effect, I kind of want to start pretty much right away. So instead of mapping its volume and having it turn up gradually, we're going to map its own on-off switch. So hit map there and map to chopper. And once again, we're going to do 1 here for minimum and 0 for max. Let's see what that's doing here. So the chain is off. Even though these two devices are on, the chain's off, so nothing's going through it. And then right when you turn it on, right when you start turning it, it turns on. Okay, and then you see the amount increase, and at the same time you see the rate also, I guess decrease as far as the fraction goes. Great. Now, once again, we put it on its own chain because there's going to be something on the main in EQ8 that we also are going to be controlling with the chopper macro. Let's throw an EQ8 down. Okay, rename it chopper. And so right away, we're going to grab the fourth node, do a low pass, and we're going to do something like this. So basically, once we initiate the chopper knob, these low end frequencies of the main song are still going to be left intact, but this high end information here is going to be what's getting chopped up. Maybe I'll bring that up just a little bit. So with the EQ8, we want this to be turned on only when we initiate the chopper macro knob. So once again, map, boom, on off, map, and we want to do the 1 0 once again. So let's see, it's off because chopper's at its default position all the way to the left. Then boom, right when it turns on. And let's see what happens on the chopper chain itself. It's subtle, but this is off right here, and you'll see it turn white when it turns on. Boom. All right, so let's see how that sounds. Great. So that's really nice. I put the maximum, as you just saw, up to 1/48th, but you saw I only turned it maybe 2/3 to 3 o'clock to get to 1/32nd. I think that helps a little better. If you really wanted to get messed up, turn it all the way to 1/48. So that takes a little more thought. Unlike the gain low at the beginning of the video where I told you you don't even have to think about it. You can just crank it down, crank it back up. The chopper will take a little more thought, and you can play around with the amount and the rate range of mapping, just like that. So, but that is the chopper effect. So that's pretty good. All right, so the next macro is going to be beat repeat. My dog is just like staring me dead in the face. You want to come up here for this one? Come on, you want to learn about beat repeat? Let's go. Okay, you gotta behave for a sec. Eat dinner in just a little while. It's not time yet. Okay. Let's learn about beat repeat. Everyone knows it, everyone loves it. Oh, let's see if I can see over you. All right, so this one is not gonna need its own chain. Grab the beat repeat. So we'll just put it on the main chain. Great. So we want the interval. Actually, the interval is not going to matter because we're triggering it. So we're going to turn this repeat on. So that makes the interval not matter. Offset, stay at 0. Chance, 100%. The gate is also not going to matter because we have repeat on. The grid is what we're going to map. So let's hit map, grid, map to the beat repeat macro. And we're going to do 1/4 to 1/32. Okay. Unclick map. No triplets once again. The trigger turned to 1/16 once again. And we're going to stay with mix, which means that the beat repeat, the sound that's getting repeated is going to be playing over the mix. If you turn to ins, then that means that all you're going to hear is what's getting repeated and the rest of the song is going to drop out. But I think the mixing sounds fine. That's why I'm not putting this on its own chain. And one of the reasons why that works is because we're going to turn this filter button on. And once again, same thing here. We're going to avoid chopping up any of the lows here. So we're going to go for those mid highs. And the mid highs are your friend when you want to start bringing an effect in. That's kind of what I've learned. You know, you don't want to take away that low end. You still want that beat to be there so people don't get perturbed because they suddenly can't dance. They don't have a beat to dance to. All right, so we're going to want to only turn the beat repeat on when we touch the beat repeat macro. So once again, map, click the on off switch for beat repeat and hit map. And once again, 1 for the min, 0 for the max. All right, so let's see how this goes. Okay, that sounded all right. Honestly, beat repeat is probably the macro knob that I avoid the most, play the least, because it can be tough when you turn it. Whatever noise it catches, that's what's going to be repeated, and you are going to be married to that until you turn it off again. So there's a little more art form going there. I think the second turn I just did sounded a little better than the first, right, Frankie? Right? Okay. You agree? Good. All right, let's go. Let's get to it. All right, the gremlin is fed. So onto macro 7, which is Decoder. And Decoder is going to be built quite similarly to Deconstruct, but it's going to serve a different purpose at the end of the day. Add its own chain. And like I said, it's going to be built similarly because it's going to run through an auto pan and a beat repeat, just like Deconstruct. So let's grab the auto pan. There. The amount, 73% or something. But once again, we don't want this sine wave crap. We want the messy stuff right there. Rate, once again, not in hertz, but in beats. Fraction of beats. This time is going to be 1/32. Width all the way up, shape all the way up. Let's get messy because we're nearing the end. And I'm not going to play you this right now like I did for Deconstruct. It's going to sound just messy and pretty similar. The beat repeat is what makes this sound different from Deconstruct at the end of the day. So let's grab the beat repeat. Okay, so we're going to keep repeat off this time. So the interval is going to matter. So let's do 1/16 interval. Offset is going to be 4/16. The grid is going to be 1/32. And the variation is going to be 2. No triplet button on again. Trigger turn to 1/16 again. Chance, let's bring this down 80%. Get a little more randomness in there. And the gate is going to be 11/16 here. Okay. And we're going to do ins right here this time. And the filter is going to be even more narrow than we had on the Deconstruct. So let's something like that. Okay. All right, so let's see how that sounds. Just with the decoder on and the main bus turned off. Okay, so at the end of the day, that sounds more messy and less tight than the Deconstruct. It sounds a little less, I don't want to say musical, but the point of Decoder versus Deconstruct is that the Decoder will stop people in their tracks a little more. So use it sparingly, maybe in a breakdown section of your song. But what we also need to do is mix it with the main. So let's grab an EQ8, throw it on here, and we're going to do one node high pass around 100 hertz like that. And we haven't mapped anything yet, so let's map our volume of our decoder in the exact same way we map the volume of the Deconstruct. So map, boom, decoder right there. Where are we here? Okay, so once again, yeah, I think I'm going to do a -2 again as opposed to 0. Let's try that. Now on the main, minimize beat repeat. We're going to do a utility because I'm not as worried about messing with the low end here on Decoder like I was on Deconstruct. So I'm just going to grab a utility to be able to map the entire gain of the main track, the main chain. So that's what we're going to map here. Map, gain, Decoder. Now, so this is going to start at 0, and it's going to go to a negative number, which is going to be -6, something like that. Yeah, that sounds good. So let's make sure this is acting okay. 0 to -6 on the main, and on the decoder comes up. This just comes up. That's the only thing that's being mapped. All right, let's see how that sounds. Forgot to turn the main on. Let's go. So that sounded pretty cool on a beat, over a beat, but you could see how it also sounded really nice maybe when the beat has already dropped out and you have some just melodic instruments playing, and you can chop them up really nicely and widen the sound. So that is Decoder for you. All right, the last macro is the simplest. It's just a reverb. You can use whatever reverb you like. I chose a reverb that would wipe out pretty much all of the sound, even some of the low ends, because I would use it to transition between songs. And you can just put it on the main. The one I chose is Large Factory, which I already have highlighted here in Reverb Hall. Large Factory, boom, okay. Do a little low end cut, but not much. Pretty much want my frequency range to be quite wide. Once again, to wipe the sound out. Decay time is quite high at 5.21 seconds. Once again, to help wipe the sound out. And what we're going to be mapping here is the dry wet, of course. Map, dry wet, map to the reverb macro, min 0%, max 100%. Cool, awesome. So let's see. Whoop, 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 whoop. All right, cool. See how that sounds. All right, so I hope you guys enjoyed me walking you through the live audio effect rack that I've built that I use for my live shows. And I hope you learned some tips that you can use to build your own sounds, how to make different chains and be able to mix it with the main chain readily, so you're not stopping people in their tracks when you turn a knob on stage. Once again, my name is Darren Murphy, aka More Precious Dust. I will catch you next time. Oh, and tickle and like that subscribe button. Right, that's what YouTube people say, right? Right?